Hi, it's Luke here. I help people who've been through the ringer, people who've faced public shaming, seen their careers destroyed, and battled through some of the toughest adversity life can throw at you. I've been there myself, so I get it. And that's part of the reason why I've developed this fascination with neuroscience. It blows my mind how the brain works, what makes us tick, what drives our actions, and how emotions like anger, joy, or even depression can shape our lives. I recently read this fantastic book on neuroscience called Your Brain at Work by David Rock. And one chapter in particular really struck me. It was about how our brains handle unfairness and injustice. Have you ever been in a situation, maybe in a game or just in life, where things felt blatantly unfair, like someone cheated or they benefited at your expense by doing something underhanded? You know that feeling, right? It's this heaviness in your chest. It's almost like a physical reaction. You might have even felt it while watching a documentary about someone wrongfully imprisoned. It's visceral. It hits you deep. Turns out that reaction isn't just emotional. It's hardwired into our brains. It's a survival mechanism that's been bred into us over millions of years. And I can relate to this one on a deeply personal level. Now, if you've watched any of my other videos, you'll know why. If not, here's the short version. I went through a situation that was beyond unfair. I faced 15 trumped-up charges, all orchestrated by a crooked lawyer and an evil plastic surgeon who were out to destroy me. It was a calculated attack with witnesses coached to lie and a defense attorney who, I believe, was paid to throw the case. It was a rigged game from the start, and as I share my story, you'll see how deep the corruption went. It isn't just a conspiracy theory, it's real, and it wrecked my career. I was naive back then. I believed in a fair trial, but I was up against some very powerful enemies who threw massive amounts of money at making sure that I lost. And this personal experience that made David Rock's insights on fairness resonate so strongly with me. You see, fairness isn't just a moral concept. It's a primary need for the brain. When we feel things are unfair, it triggers things that are fair, it triggers a reward response. But when things are unfair, it creates a threat response that can last for days, even years. And if you're like me, if you've faced a massive injustice, this isn't just theory, it's your reality. And I've got a lot more to say about this, especially how I've managed to keep going despite everything that happened. So if you're dealing with unfairness, public shaming, or feel like the world's stacked against you, stick around. You're not alone, and I'm here to help you get through it. Now we're going to dive even deeper into how our brains react to unfairness as injustice. And if you're someone who's battled through public shaming, a wrecked career, or serious adversity, trust me, understanding this stuff can really help you make sense of what you've been through. So here's something interesting. It's not just big injustices that get under our skin. Even the small stuff can mess with us, like when a taxi driver takes the long route just to squeeze a few extra bucks out of you. It's not about the money, it's the feeling of being taken advantage of. And it can bother you for the rest of the day. Some people even take things to court purely on principle, spending massive amounts of money just to right a wrong, even if there's no financial gain in it. Why? Because we crave fairness. In fact, some people spend their life savings or even their lives fighting for it. It's wild how this plays out in the brain. There's a region called the striatum, and it lights up when we get a reward. It's connected to the midbrain, which is all about positive reinforcement and reward-based learning. Basically, when we experience fairness, our brain feels good, like getting a hit of dopamine. But when we experience unfairness, a completely different part of the brain gets activated, the anterior insula. That's a term. Anyway, this is fascinating because the insula is linked to disgust, like tasting something rotten. It turns out social disgust, like being betrayed, is processed in the same way our brains as a disgusting taste. No wonder it feels so awful. And here's where it gets even more interesting. Neuroscientist Steven Pinker has a theory about why we react so strongly to unfairness. In his book, How the Mind Works, he talks about how our fairness detectors evolved because of the way humans used to trade and share resources. Back in hunter-gatherer days, you couldn't store food in a fridge, so the best way to store resources was by giving favors to others, basically banking on reciprocity. But for that to work, you needed to be really good at spotting cheaters, people who promised but didn't deliver. And that's where our strong fairness detectors come from. It gave us an evolutionary advantage. These days we've got bank accounts and refrigerators, so we don't need to trust people in such a primal way. But our fairness detecting circuits are still there. And you know where they get a workout? In games, like poker, sports, or even board games. It's like we use these games to flex our fairness muscles in a safe environment. And here's something more powerful. When we feel that a situation is fair, we get a rush of feel-good transmitters like dopamine, oxytocin, and serotonin. So it's not just about feeling happy, it's about trust. And when we feel someone's treated us fairly, our oxytocin levels shoot up, and that builds up trust. On the flip side, living in a world that feels unfair messes with our cortisol levels, the stress hormone. It impacts our well-being and can even shorten our lifespan. That's why some people quit their jobs, not because of the pay, but because they feel the company isn't being fair to its workers or customers. David Rock, the author of Your Brain at Work, talks about the dynamic between fairness and expectations. If you expect someone to be fair, and they are, you get a double dose of dopamine. First, because your expectation was met, and second, because of the fairness itself. What about unexpected fairness? That feels even better, which is why random acts of kindness from a stranger can be so meaningful. But here's the kicker. If you expect someone to be fair and they're not, especially if it's someone you trust, like a friend, you get a double negative. Your expectations are shattered and you feel the sting of unfairness. And when that happens, you've got a perfect storm of emotional pain. There's even a word for it, betrayal. It's a visceral experience, and if you've been through it, you know exactly how much it hurts. I know this because I've been there. I trusted people who just didn't let me down. They destroyed my career and my reputation. And that sense of betrayal was gut-wrenching. But understanding how our brains react to unfairness has helped me process it and eventually start to heal. If you've been through something similar, I want you to know that you're not alone. I'll be sharing more about my journey and how I've learned to cope with betrayal, unfairness, and public shaming. By the way, if you are interested in my story, I've already written 2 books which you can read a more detailed version of my story. The links are in the description. So make sure you subscribe and hit that notification bell. I'll see you in the next one, and until then, hang in there. We're in this together.